most people think they're self-aware. And it's really interesting when you look at the research. It tells us that more people think they're self-aware than people who are actually self-aware. Now, I think becoming more self-aware is an incredibly powerful tool to help you to live a more authentic life and to experience higher levels of happiness and well-being. If you'd like to find out more, stick around. Hello, my name is Elfrida Manahan-Vaughan of Metta-morphics, and this is the 5th video in the series of Under the Circumstances, You're Totally Frickin' Normal. And I've created this video series because of the work I've done as a coach and because of my own life experience to help people to let go of some of the shame that they have around experiencing trauma or adverse experiences in childhood that make them feel like there's something wrong with them. Because I believe that whatever we've experienced in our life, we've experienced as a means to survive and to cope with whatever's been going on. And that's totally normal. This video is about self-awareness, and this is something that I find extremely interesting as a subject. It's something that I work on myself all of the time, and it's something that I know from my own experience has helped me to become much more comfortable with who I am, to feel safer in my relationships, to feel okay with being vulnerable, and to be more authentic out in the world. Now, my avenue into self-awareness was mindfulness, but I'm not going to talk about that in this video. I'll talk about that in a later video. But what I want to talk about is the idea of how we develop as a human being and how we develop in our awareness. And I can't talk about that without talking about the work of the psychologist Robert Kegan and his theory on constructive development. And so the constructive development theory is about how we move through the stages of childhood, which is based on the work of Jean Piaget, into our adult development. And Kegan said that there are 5 stages that we seem to go through. The first 2 are primarily to do with our childhood. So in the first stage, obviously, we're small children. In the second stage, we're teenagers into young adult. And then we enter into the third stage, which is young adulthood and into adulthood. Now, the amazing thing about this research is that most people get stuck at stage 3. So about 58% of the population, based on the research, are caught in this early adulthood stage of development. The stage 4, then, there is about 35% of the population who get to stage 4, and stage 5 is about 1%. Now, I think that's amazing. Now, the reality is, though, just to say that this is not necessarily a linear process, and you may move between the stages. So some of you, when you hear more about them, will recognize that you are in one stage in one area of your life and in another stage in another area of life, and that's totally normal. It's not that we just automatically jump. We kind of go over and back and over and back, and eventually we kind of stabilize more into one state. But I think it's really fascinating that so many people get stuck at stage 3 and that they actually don't move on. And a huge amount of that is to do with our level of self-awareness. Now, when it comes to stage 5, that's not achieved until after the age of 40. So the 1% that have achieved it didn't achieve it until after the age of 40. So, you know, it's perfectly normal to be at stage 4 if you're under 40, or even to be at stage 3. But obviously we want to develop. So the stages that are relevant to us are 3, 4, and 5. So stage 3 is the socialized mind. And the socialized mind means we get to a point in our life where we start to become aware of other people. At stage 2, we are aware of other people, but we are driven by our own needs and desires. If we follow the rules or we do what we're told, it's because we believe we'll get in trouble if we don't. And if we do break the rules, it's because we believe that we can get away with it. Now, when we get to stage 3, we become more socialized. And this is more to do with the traditional idea of our cultures and our communities and how we engage with other people. And so being more socialized means we start to worry about what other people think. We start to worry about our impact on other people. We start to think about, you know, how we and our relationships are interlinked. And so our focus often becomes trying to fit in, trying to be a good person, trying not to make mistakes, worrying about other people will judge us, worrying about whether we're doing the right thing, worrying about whether we look the right way. All of those things emerge in this socialized mind. And remember, 58% of people in the population of the world are in that stage, according to the research. And so that means that our focus is about how we are in the world. Do we follow, along with a lot of the rules and the guidelines? Do we fit with how things are meant to be? Now, if we go into stage 4 is the self-authoring mind. And so this, for me, when I work with clients, and certainly on my own journey, I recognize this as it starts to emerge, is the point where people start to ask the question, what do I want? And so this is where people formalize their own thoughts and their own opinions, and they are not uncomfortable with expressing those things. So when they think about things, they think about, well, why do I think about this? Not it's because that's what we're told, not because of my faith or my family or my history or my origin or anything like that, but why do I think it? And so then the concern becomes lessened when it comes to other people. So in this stage, people are less worried about how other people perceive them, and they're more concerned about whether they're living a life that is aligned with their values, aligned with their beliefs, if they are functioning in a way in the world that feels congruent and authentic for them. So they're formulating their sense of who they are and saying, this is who I am, I accept this person as I am, and I'm willing to present this person to the world without worrying about what other people will think about this. Now, in this stage, it doesn't mean that you won't slip back into other stages. So you might experience this, say, in a work environment or in a personal environment and not somewhere else. So you might struggle with it in your family and still find you're at stage 3 in your family, whilst you're stage 4 when it comes to your friendships, or stage 4 when it comes to your relationship. And that's totally normal. And when it comes to then the last stage, which is stage 5, this is the self-transforming mind. Now, I find this one really interesting because this is about recognizing that we are not one thing. It's about not identifying with ourselves as a singular thing, as a good person or a bad person or a confident person or a shy person, or any of these definitions that we often apply to ourselves. This is about recognizing that our identity changes depending on context, and that there is truth in all things. Now, I've spoken before on some of my other videos about polarized thinking. And polarized thinking is thinking in terms of black and white. When somebody gets to stage 5, they stop thinking like that. So they realize, yes, these things can both be true at the same time. So I can be a nice person and I can also be awful. That I can be good at something, and you know what, if that person says I'm not good, well, maybe in that situation, in that context with that person, that also has truth. And so I know for me, I'd love to say, oh, I'm in stage 5. I know I'm not. I know that I'm in stage 3 sometimes, I'm in stage 4 sometimes, and when I'm lucky, I get glimpses of stage 5 in certain contexts. I still worry about certain things. I'm still driven by certain values of needs for safety or desires for freedom that influence how I interact in the world. And so the point of self-awareness is getting to the point of recognizing that. So understanding that those things drive certain behaviors in you. So if you're holding yourself back, it's going, well, what is my need within this? If you're judging somebody or criticizing somebody or giving feedback to somebody, asking yourself, well, what's actually driving this? Is it all to do with them and this context, or is there something that is to do with me? And the more we delve into this and ask these questions, the more our sense of ourself becomes expanded. So if you're in, your stage 3, the thing is to ask questions about why is it these things appear true to you. So for example, if you think you have to look a particular way, asking, well, where does that come from? Is that from your family, from how you were raised, from your socialization, from their culture, from your religion? Are they the reasons that this belief exists in you? If you're moving into stage 4, you want to move into stage 4, then you have to ask the questions, but what do I actually think? And what's my evidence and why do I think it? So if you're asking a question, well, why do I think I need to look a particular way? Then your answer won't be one sentence. It should be 20, it could even be 30 sentences while you really delve into that to find the real reasons behind it. Very often the reasons behind it are to fit in, to be accepted, to be loved, to feel safe, to feel part of something. There are many of the reasons why we want to appear in a particular way. And if we're moving into the fifth stage, this is about recognizing that two things can exist at the same time, and that in different contexts we can be different people. So we're transforming this sense of our identity and showing up in an authentic way and learning from that and saying, oh, okay, so in this context, this is how I feel, and what does this tell me about myself, and how do I want to do things differently, or how can I recognize this in other contexts, and what does this tell me? So it's a real learning stage in my opinion. And so I think the more we delve into our self-awareness, and certainly I know from my own experience, the more I delved into my self-awareness, the more I was able to recognize the difficulties I was dealing with. So those of you that follow me on social media and have seen things on my website will know I don't hide the fact that I have had complex post-traumatic stress disorder in my lifetime, and I'll talk in more detail about what that is in another video. But CPTSD triggers massive amounts of toxic shame. And for me, I had to explore what that shame was about. I still do, because sometimes it surfaces because there's lots of layers to it. And in exploring that shame, then I had to ask myself, can I sit with it? And can I recognize that some of the things I feel shame about maybe are okay to feel shame about in certain contexts? That shame is a follow-on to guilt and embarrassment, and guilt and embarrassment are useful because they tell us maybe where we need to be better, or where we need to change things, or make amends if we've made mistakes. And from a perspective of self-awareness, that tells us more about who we want to be. So if I don't want to feel uncomfortable because of some of my actions or behaviors, and I don't want to feel the experience of shame, then I need to recognize who do I need to be in those contexts so that that doesn't happen. Or I need to recognize that I'm telling myself a story that's part of my past that says I should feel embarrassed or ashamed in those contexts. And those are the words we need to watch out for. Should is a word that comes from your socialization and how you were raised. When we're in a place of this is me and this is who I am, and a place of authenticity, then the words we use are I want, I like, I can, I will, I am. And we're comfortable with those things. But being comfortable with the flawed side of us and recognizing our humanity helps us to move up those stages of development. And it also gives us an opportunity to really recognize who we are. And so for me, I used mindfulness to support myself in that. I've used obviously coaching, and I've also used research into psychology to understand, well, what happens to people as we become more aware or as we progress. Certainly at stage 5, they say most people who achieve stage 5 have a meditation practice of some form, or they've engaged in some kind of activity that has given them a transcendent experience. So experience of viewing the self from outside of themselves. I know from some of my training in acceptance and commitment therapy and training and coaching that being able to see the self as context, which allows us to access our higher self or our authentic self, allows us to recognize that the things that come through us or that occur in us are just arising in us, but we are not them. And so if you're interested in finding out how you can develop your self-awareness, if you're interested in working with me as a coachee, with me as your coach, then please do get in touch. I'd love if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel, watch the other videos if you haven't already, or click on my website if you'd like to find out a little bit more about what I do. And no matter what is going on for you in your life, whether you are stuck in the middle of some huge adversity, or whether you've come out the other side of it like I have and are starting to recognize that it's time to grow and develop, then just remember that whatever you're experiencing at the point you are in your life is totally freaking normal, because if you weren't experiencing it, you might not be here. Thanks for watching. I hope our paths cross again in the future.